What's going on, guys? I'm Dave, and welcome back to another episode of Debt Free Differently. Today, I wanted to share some quick and simple ways for you to start generating passive income, real money that you're making in your sleep without lifting a finger. For some reason, passive income has kind of become this mythical creature of money, but getting started is a lot simpler than you might think. A lot of people think that you have to create a business, buy real estate, do a ridiculous MLM, or do some crazy affiliate marketing. While you could do those things, there are easier ways that involve a lot less risk and mental investment, and you can get started today with a whole lot less money than you might think. Let's jump right into it. Let's start with one of the more fun ones. Dividend investing. While there is some risk involved with buying individual stocks because the price does go up and down, I'll share how you can make this a whole lot less risky. A dividend is a payment that you get from a company's earnings for owning their stock. Not all companies offer dividends, but when a company is profitable, they can choose to either invest that money back in the business or distribute it to shareholders through dividends. That's where you come in. For example, let's say you own 100 shares of a particular stock. If that company declares a dividend of 25 cents, you get $25. The math is pretty simple. You buy the stock, you do nothing, the company gives you money based on its performance. Most companies pay out dividends quarterly, but the schedules vary. Some companies even pay out dividends monthly. Now, if you're new to investing, it might be a little bit intimidating to figure out what stocks to buy, or you might just not have a lot of time to do a ton of research. Also, you might have like $50 to invest, and that's fine too. The good part is that there's a cheat sheet for dividend investing. It's a list called the Dividend Aristocrats. Companies become dividend aristocrats by paying and increasing their dividend to shareholders for 25 consecutive years. Many of them have been doing it for much longer than that, and there are about 60 or so dividend aristocrats today. Most of them are companies that you've actually heard of, like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Target, Pepsi, AT&T, 3M, the list goes on. In general, I only invest in things that I actually understand, and the good part is that you'll know at least half of the dividend aristocrats. Have you ever heard that disclaimer, past performance is not indicative of future results? When you buy a stock of the dividend aristocrat, you're taking some of the risk out of that statement when it comes to dividends. Obviously, the more shares that you own, the more money that you'll get paid out to you as dividends, so if you don't have a ton of money, you're not going to start living off your passive income overnight. But the good news is, you can start today just by buying your first Dividend Aristocrat stock. Prices change from day to day, but you should be able to pick one up for less than 50 bucks. Just like that, you're a dividend investor and you're generating passive income. If you want to diversify your portfolio, maybe you buy a different stock next month. Look at all those buzzwords. Just for fun this year, I set a goal to own over 100 dividend paying stocks. Whenever I had some extra cash, I'd buy a stock. So instead of spending my money, I would buy a stock, increase my net worth, and also generate more passive income. Even though I don't have a ton of money invested, you can see that I'm starting to generate passive income about 10 to 15 times per month for doing nothing. As my portfolio grows, who would be upset at $10, $20, or even $50 in passive income every other day? The fun part about this is that you can kind of baby step your way through all of these investing things that might sound intimidating, and with Dividend Aristocrats, you're going to get something back for buying one of those stocks. The Robinhood app makes it pretty easy to buy individual stocks, so I'll include a link in the description if you're ready to get started. Next up is old, reliable index funds. An index fund is a single investment that covers a large group of stocks. One of the most popular index funds is VT Sachs from Vanguard, so let's use that one as an example. If you're a Reddit user, Reddit people love VT Sachs, and I do too. When you buy a share of VT Sachs, you own a tiny piece of the entire US stock market. While you might not be able to afford a share of Amazon, Apple, or Google right now, you can own this much of them by buying an index fund like VT Sachs. Now, how does it generate passive income? It does so in two different ways. First is the stock price itself. Historically, a whole market index fund like VT Sachs is going to return something like 7%-ish per year. This is going to vary from year to year, but in the end, if you leave your money in there for a number of years, you can generally expect that 7% appreciation or so. If you look at its chart, you can see that the price goes up and to the right. As the price goes up, that's one way that you're passively adding to your net worth without doing a thing. Second is what we were just talking about. Dividends. Index funds generally have a dividend that's around 1.5%. While that might not sound like a lot, or it sounds similar to what you could get from your bank with interest, the magic comes together when you combine the growing stock price with the dividend that you're receiving. And well, it's invested, so it's a lot more difficult for you to spend than something that's sitting in your bank account. As the price of the stock goes up, that 1.5% dividend starts to add up to a little bit more. And that brings us to our next one, reinvest your dividends. I'm cheating a little bit because this is kind of a combination of the previous two, but this is a critical part of your passive income machine. Albert Einstein once called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world and mankind's greatest invention, and who would we be to call Albert Einstein wrong? Instead of taking your money out every time you receive a dividend or see some gains in the stock market, reinvest your dividends and stay invested. Usually when you buy an index fund, there's a little checkbox that you click and it lets you reinvest the dividends automatically. Do this every time until you have so much money and you're generating so much passive income that you're ready to start taking it out, living off of it, or doing something with it. If you're doing dividend investing and buying individual stocks, there's something called a DRIP, a dividend reinvestment plan. With a DRIP, any dividends that are paid out to you are automatically reinvested to buy a little bit more of that stock. Since it's automatic, the great part is that this reinvestment happens without you even thinking about it. Because you own a little more stock, your next dividend gets a little bit bigger, and so on and so on. You're basically starting to create your own little passive income snowball. Especially with index funds like VT Sachs, if you automatically reinvest your dividends and stay invested, you can expect to double your money about every 8 to 10 years. So let's say that you started big with a $5,000 investment in an index fund when you were 20 years old. You kept the money invested and you automatically reinvested the dividends. Even if we're conservative and say that your money would double in 10 years instead of 8, here's what would happen. By 30, you'd have $10,000. By 40, you'd have $20,000. By 50, you'd have $40,000. And by 60, you'd have $80,000 from that $5,000 investment. That's $75,000 for doing nothing but being patient. Compound interest rules. Now let's talk about real estate. When it comes to passive income, a lot of people think about buying a rental property or buying a commercial building. It seems simple. If the rent is higher than your mortgage, your insurance, your property tax and maintenance, you're in the black. We own a rental property, and while this is true, not everybody has the resources to gather up a second house down payment solely to just buy a house to be a rental property to generate passive income. And it comes with some headaches, even if you have a property manager. Instead of saving up a down payment and doing things the hard way, you can invest in a REIT, which is a real estate investment trust. You can buy a REIT like you do a stock, and the way that it works is very similar, except for instead of buying a tiny piece of a company, you're buying a small piece of a real estate portfolio. These trusts take money that people have invested and they get into real estate, usually in a particular sector, like residential, commercial buildings, hospital buildings, or something else. As the REIT profits off their investment, they pass a dividend along to you, and usually these dividends are pretty good, usually closer to around 5% compared to around 2% for a dividend aristocrat. So if the dividend is bigger, why don't people put all of their money into REITs instead of dividend aristocrats? Typically, over a long period of time, the companies that become dividend aristocrats are also seeing their stock price grow, which makes the value of their dividend grow as well. With REITs, you see a lot less of that growth. But if it's interesting to you, there's nothing stopping you from doing both. One of the most popular REITs is Realty Income, which is O on the stock market. They pay a consistent dividend out to shareholders, and they pay dividends once a month. Also, if the thought of investing in a single REIT is scary to you because maybe a certain sector just collapses one day, there are also index funds from companies like Vanguard where you can buy into an index fund for REITs. That way you can get a little bit of residential, a little bit of commercial, maybe some hotels, and a little bit of industrial as well. Basically does spray and pray for you, and you become a real estate investor for probably a whole lot less money than you would have thought. Passive income doesn't have to be scary, difficult, or expensive. There are a lot of more difficult, less proven ways to try and create passive income that a lot of people lose money on. You don't have to be that person. I hope this video showed you how you can start generating your own passive income without a ton of time or money. If you learned something new or like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, or subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Debt Free Differently.